What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Finding Hope podcast. I'm your host, Kayla Bundy. I'm so happy you're here. Happy Wednesday. I hope it's sunny where you are. I've been so blessed recently. It's starting to get warmer in California, and I know California seems like it should always be sunny every single day and warm, but after living here, it really is not. I've learned that's a facade. It's not real. We definitely have our gloom. We have our rain. We have cold. And so I'm happy because it's sunny. It's really sunny today, which has been amazing. Today's topic is one that I think I'm stoked to talk about, honestly, because it's something I've really dealt a lot with my whole life. And I think especially when you're in your mid-20s, young 20s, or you've recently entered college, I think this is becoming a really, really big thing. And it's always been a big thing, but it's just gotten a lot more normalized, in my opinion. And so we're going to be talking a whole lot about drinking, the party scene, drugs, all of it. If you should, if you shouldn't, how to say no if you feel uncomfortable, just being confident in your no, and then also what that line is of should I go out, should I stay in, and giving you guys a lot of helpful tools and tips, as well as providing clarity into all of those areas. So I'm so excited for you to listen to this episode and walk away just feeling much more secure in your decisions, confident in the choices you're making, and excited to have a lot of fun at the end of the day, because I think that's what the appeal is with kind of drinking and drugs and the party scene and just trying all of that. And we're not going to leave this episode feeling like, oh, we're missing out on fun, because that's not my idea at all. I love having a good time. I have so much fun whenever I'm out and socializing. And so with or without substances, we're going to get to the place where we're leaving feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited for the next time I have this social interaction, because I'm going to have a great time no matter what. Okay, so let's just start, I guess, with a little bit of background on what it's looked like for me in my life. I obviously grew up very Christian, and I've known so clearly that Jesus, his first miracle, was turning water into wine. And then I've also known so clearly that he calls us to be sober-minded and to abstain from being drunk or putting any substances in our body that are going to alter our mental state. So I feel like growing up, I never drank until I was 21. I'm legal and everything now. And so I feel like I have some grounds to talk on this. I definitely did not before I had ever tried it. Before I turned 21, I had no problem saying no to alcohol. I had no problem saying no to drugs. I knew exactly where I stood on it, what I thought on it. And for me, I was like, well, I'm not legal. There's no way I would ever touch any of this stuff until I am. I was a big rule follower, if you couldn't tell, growing up. But during those stages in my life, what I want to press into, because I was around people that partied all of the time. It was not like I had a really, really clean group of Christian friends and I was super sheltered and I didn't know what any of that was. I didn't have access to it. And so saying no was always easy, because that's not the case. A ton of my friends did all of the drugs. They partied all the time. They drank almost every time I was hanging out with them. Like, it wasn't, I was in those environments a lot in high school and during like college age and that sort of a thing, because that was very normal for the environments I was in. Because I think things are always easy to say no to when you're kind of sheltered and you're not exposed to things. But when you're exposed, it's a whole different battle of, okay, now how do I say no to this? And so if some of you guys are in college and you're like, I don't really know how to say no, I don't feel comfortable doing that, I don't really want to, this part of the episode is so for you, because my big conviction was that I wasn't legal, and that I knew no matter what, I didn't want to be drunk. Even if I was legal, I was like, I don't want to be drunk. That's like not my vibe. That's not my thing. And I would say, like, my best advice for saying no, if you know you don't want to drink, is being fully confident in your decisions in every aspect of your life. Because it was no problem for me to say no to my friends who were drinking or who were smoking or doing any of that if they offered it to me, because I was already so used to saying what I was okay with and what I wasn't okay with in life in general. And if I wanted to do something, if I didn't want to do something. And so it naturally transferred over into maybe some more uncomfortable topics or conversations. And a big part was also the people I was around. Because if I had been around people that peer pressured me like crazy, it may have been very, very different. But my friends, they were very respectful and honoring of my decisions. Even if they weren't the same as theirs, there was always this mutual respect. And I would say, being the person that isn't going to drink and partake in those environments, I also want to encourage you to not be judgmental of the people that are, but to also extend that respect of the choices they're making. Because I think I knew a lot of people who it became very awkward if they did not partake, because their body language would show that they're uncomfortable. They had a very judgmental attitude to the people that were. They were very adamant about making sure everyone knew that it was wrong to do that. And it made the whole place just feel like, oh, okay, so no one here can actually like be themselves. And now I'm going to feel bad for any choice that I'm making moving forward. And I'm not for that at all. I don't think that is very helpful. I think if you want people to respect your decisions, you have to respect others as well. And so that was a big thing for me of like, I might not agree with what you're doing, and I can happily encourage you into the reasons why I don't. Or if you're wanting to learn why not, I don't really partake in those activities, I love having those conversations. I'm always open to having those conversations. But I don't think it's loving to come in and just point fingers and be like, I'm not doing this because it's wrong. You're doing this. You shouldn't do this. And why in the world would you do that? And so I think just having a posture of like respect from everyone that's in the room, whether you're partaking or you're not, I think is just so important, honestly. And it creates like a safer place for everyone that is there. I also think I never had a problem saying no because I had so much fun without it. I wasn't looking for escapism. And I think that is what can be such a temptation in these environments, is the escapism that comes with it, and sort of that pass you have to be whatever you want. And you kind of have this excuse of like, oh, well, she's drunk, that's why she's doing that. Or, oh, he's like stoned, like don't listen to him, he's fine, like he can do whatever. And you kind of have this pass when you are not sober minded to be or act or do what you might want to do. And that is where I want to just encourage you that it is so much more fun when you can do all of that and live that way, and you don't have anything in you giving you that permission to do it. And that's like a big thing I learned when I was young, was just, oh my gosh, I can have so much fun. I can dance my butt off. Like, it was actually funny because anytime I would be with my friends or socialize, or like other people would be around, even to this day, a lot of times people will think I'm drunk because I'm dancing around, I'm having the time of my life, I'm talking up a storm, like I'm living, and I haven't had an ounce of alcohol in me. I haven't touched any sort of substance that is going to alter my state. It's just I know how to have fun without anything fueling that for me. And my dad, he would always say, like, I'm high on life, there's no reason to take anything else. And I loved that. And my mom, like, I grew up with her, who she had so many stories of her being at parties when she was young and her dancing around, her having the time of her life, and people offering her drinks, and she was always just like, no, I'm good, I'm chilling. And like, it becomes awkward when you feel awkward, I think. And I think body language is just a big aspect of that, because if you're going to these environments to start with, I mean, if you don't go, it's totally different. But if you're going into these environments, if you're at college, if you have work parties, if you're going out with your friends, if you're going to choose to go, first of all, I would say pre-decide what you're going to do. Pre-decide how you're going to act in those environments, so that way you're not easily influenced. And pre-decide if you're going to have a good time or not. Don't decide there and then, am I going to have fun here? Oh, I'm not having fun. This isn't like, maybe I shouldn't have come. I feel awkward. I feel uncomfortable. I would really encourage you to pre-decide if you're going to have fun or not. And if you decide you're not going to have fun, don't go. If you decide you're going to have fun, go. And because I think every time I've gone and I've pre-decided I'm having a great time, no matter what, doesn't matter who's there, doesn't matter where we end up going, doesn't matter if I have anything to drink or not, I'm going to have a good time. And when I show up in that posture, it's so different, because when I've shown up and I'm uncomfortable and I feel pressured, I don't feel like I can say no, I feel awkward, I feel guilty, I feel all of these things, I feel so out of my comfort zone, I don't like what's happening around me, it totally changes my body language. It changes my body language. And then it also makes people feel more inclined to pressure me, because they can see from my whole demeanor that I'm uncomfortable. And so they want to encourage me to drink, encourage me to do something that's going to loosen me up and make me have a better time. And because they want, and I don't think it's ill-intended. I think like most of the time when people are saying that, it's because they genuinely want you to have fun. And if they see that you're not, they want to try to help and encourage you to do something that maybe you wouldn't. So I think body language is just huge, and pre-deciding like if you're going to enjoy yourself regardless of the situation or who's there is really beneficial. And it goes a long way, because people like to pressure you when they can tell that you aren't solid in what you're saying, or you're even uncomfortable, or you feel awkward in what you're saying. So I would say if you do feel uncomfortable, if you do feel awkward, that's so fine. That's so normal. But I want to encourage you that if that is you, to find confidence in your choices you make every single day, kind of like I said earlier, because when you're confident in the choices you make every single day, then when it comes to those bigger things, when it comes to more uncomfortable things, you don't have to second guess or feel like, oh, am I weird for saying no? Are they thinking this about me because I've said no? And it's easy to get in your head and to feel that awkward uncomfortableness. And so I just want to encourage you that it's been so helpful for me when I'm not worried about what the other person is thinking, whether I have a drink in my hand or not. Because if I'm having a good time, no one really is going to care what I'm doing and if I have anything in me or not. Whereas if I'm sitting there really awkward and it's like evident that I'm uncomfortable, that's when people most likely are going to try to pressure you into taking some sort of substance. Where my head's at now with everything, now that I am 21, I'm legal, where my head's at now with everything, now that I'm legal and there isn't like, oh, before it was such a clear line of no, because I was, in my head, I was like, that'd be breaking the rules. I'm not going to do that. Now there's no rules to break. So now I'm like, okay, now I can do that. And where I stand on all of that is I always want to be sober-minded. My intention is never to get drunk. I think you should always be responsible with anything you put in you. And I think because I said no for so long and I was able to enjoy those environments without any substances, I never have really had a desire to party. Like, that's never been me. I never had a party phase. I've never had this strong like urge to, oh, I want to experience. I want to experience it. I want to let loose, because I feel like I've always let loose in my life, and I feel like I'm always having fun. I'm always very carefree. And so it didn't feel like, oh, alcohol or drugs is something that can help take the edge off, because I'm like, well, there's not much of an edge to take off. I kind of do what I want anyway. So, and I enjoy it. Like, there's just so much about life that's so much more fun to me than getting wasted somewhere. And so I've never really had like a big desire to party. I've always had a big desire to socialize. Like, if there's an outing, I will be there. Like, I'll go for sure. But I know my limits in it, and I will consume alcohol. I'm very responsible in that. But what has helped me with that when it comes to pre-deciding like your posture when you're going to go out, I also think it's so helpful to pre-decide if you're going to drink or not. And being legal, being of age, when you have way more freedom in that sense, and especially like in the environments I'm in, there's always alcohol at events that I go to. There's always an open bar, and so it's free, and there's a lot of access that I wasn't used to and I didn't have. And what I have always found to be helpful for me when I've done it is I pre-decide before the event if I'm going to have a drink or not, and how many I'm going to have. Because when I've gone and I don't really know if I want to drink, I'm like, oh, I'll just kind of see when I get there. And then I'm way more easily like, ooh, that looks cool, I'm going to try it. And then I try something, and then I'm way more easily just not on my guard, and I don't make decisions I would have been proud of. And it's always really helpful for me to pre-decide if I'm going to drink and how much I'm going to drink before I get there, before the day, whatever it looks like. If it's a holiday, if it's 4th of July, because there's so many big like drinking holidays. And I always pre-decide like, okay, I'm not going to drink today. No matter what, I'm not going to have anything. I could get there. There could be all these cool things that I might want to try, but I've pre-decided, and I've already pre-decided I'm going to have fun no matter what. And so I stick to that. If I pre-decide I'm going to have a drink there because I want to try whatever it is that's going to be there, then that's fine. I've made that. I've pre-decided that, and I go, and I know my limits. I'm very self-aware, and I still have a good time no matter what. And I'm able to leave both scenarios feeling proud of myself because I stuck to my word. And so I think that's a big thing too, is I always feel a lot better the next day or that day when I have followed through to my word. If I didn't ever have a word for myself, and I didn't ever give myself like, hey, this is what it's going to look like, then things usually happen that I'm like, yeah, I don't feel as good the next day. Or like things usually happen that don't even give me room to be proud or disappointed, because it's just like, oh, it was a free-for-all. So I always find it very helpful to pre-decide. The verse that I'm sure we have all heard is 1 Peter 5:8, and it says, be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. I've heard this verse a lot growing up in church. Of anytime drugs are brought up, alcohol is brought up, and they're like, well, it says be sober-minded. It says be sober-minded. And so I've heard this verse a lot. But I think the second part of that is, it's not just a, hey, be sober-minded, but the verse gives clarity as to why. And the big reason why is because there is a spiritual warfare around us. The devil does exist, and it's just a gateway, and it's a door that opens up opportunities for things that we don't need. And he is prowling around like a roaring lion. He's seeking for somebody to devour. That is what he does. And so when you don't have as much control over your mind, and especially when people have blacked out and they wake up and they don't even remember what they did, to me, I'm like, well, who is operating there? Like, what? When you open that door for your mind to be so easily manipulated, I think that is where, like, it's just, to me, it doesn't even appeal to me as fun, because it can be fun to go out and be with your friends. It can be fun to have a glass of wine. It can be fun to be social, but I don't think it's fun at all to lower your ability to be aware of what you're doing, and also to increase the possibility for the devil to come in and attack you. And I think that there's a lot of attacks that happen when people are not sober minded. And a lot of people, I'll hear them say, oh, well, like, I smoke, or I like take these gummies, but I'm still sober minded. And I'm able to do this, but I'm still sober minded. And I don't have enough information on all of that. I have my personal convictions. I know that's not for me, but I want to challenge you in the sense that even if you're able to operate and you're sober minded, just like with food, just like anything we put in our bodies, just because it doesn't alter our state of mind doesn't mean we should do it and that it's good for us. And I mean, I'm pretty extreme in that because I'm all holistic. I won't even put Tylenol in my body. I will not put things in my body that are not natural. And even if they are natural and they have a possibility of altering my state, I will not ingest that. Because I think we're called to treat our body like a temple. And I do believe that what we consume and what we put in us can be harmful or hurtful. And maybe it's helpful to our physical body, but it might be hurtful to our soul and harmful to our soul. And so I encourage you in that to meditate on that aspect of things and understanding more of that side and having God reveal what that looks like to you. I know I heard this once and it was so helpful for me to hear, was just that it's interesting how sin entered the world was through Eve consuming something, and it was natural. It was from the earth, but that is what caused sin to enter into our whole world. And so just because it's natural, just because it's grown from the ground, just because there might be some benefits to it, I never think that that's ever a reason to give it a pass for being okay to consume. I've noticed too, when I am in environments or when I'm not drinking, I usually attract people that are way more similar to me, because when I'm in that crowd and when I am drinking, when I'm doing whatever, I'm usually around the people that are really abusing that freedom, and they're going maybe a little bit further than I would. And that's typically the crowd I'm around, versus even if I'm in those environments and I say, no, I'm okay, I don't drink, or I don't need a drink. I usually end up attracting people that feel the same way or are similar in that. And it creates like a cool, unique friendship. And I think you can really meet a lot of cool people that way that are gonna be more similar to you. And that's actually something I want to talk about, is back in high school, when I had friends that did it and I didn't, and they didn't pressure me. That's a big thing, because if you go out and you've noticed your friends heavily pressure you, or you don't feel comfortable saying no around your friends, I would encourage you to change up your friends, because it's not necessarily the alcohol that I think is the issue in those scenarios at all, because I've been around people that they're drinking and partying just the same as everyone else, and they're completely fine accepting what I choose to put in my body and what I don't. And then I've been around people that do the exact same thing, and they make me feel horrible, or they don't understand it. They think something's wrong with me. They think I'm weird for it. And it's just the personality type. It's the friends. It's so much more than like, oh, it's this environment that's bad. No, 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 no. I think the crowds are a big part, and identifying like what friends do you feel safe to have boundaries in, and if they don't agree with them, are they respectful of them? Because when they're respectful of them, that's amazing. Like, that's great. And I love my friends who are respectful of my boundaries. When I say, hey, no, I'm not going to do that, and they still invite me, they still want to be around me, they still enjoy me, that is so much nicer than only having friends that do every single thing that you do, that think the exact same ways as you, that are always going to be right in line with everything you do. Those friendships are amazing. But in reality, you're probably not going to only have friends that think and do the exact same things as you. And so I think when you do find those friendships, it's a beautiful thing when you can have those differences and they're always respected and they're always honored. So if you don't feel that way, I would encourage you to cultivate a different friend group. Okay, I'm going to answer a few questions from you guys that I posted a poll on my Instagram asking kind of what you guys wanted answers and what you wanted some clarity in on this topic. And so the first one is how to say no to drinking or drugs. I would say, one, understand that no one probably really cares what's in your drink or what you are smoking. If they're going to do it, they care more about them having fun than you. And so I think that takes a big weight off right there and then of like, oh, actually, yeah, most of the time, like if people care that much about what's in your cup or what you're doing, then they probably are very consumed with what others think of them. Because most of the time when you go out and if people are doing those things, they could care less what you're doing. They're just going to do what they want to do. And so I think there's kind of just like, you can kind of breathe in that, knowing, oh, actually, I'm thinking way more about this than anyone else in this room. And I'm paying way more attention to me saying no than anyone else here. And so I think the first step in just how to say no is understand that you're probably way more in your head about it and no one else is probably even going to notice. And then my second piece there is when you do say no, like I talked about earlier, just say it with confidence and be carefree. I think a lot of times it can be hard saying no because it's like, oh, well, why not? Or is something wrong? Like, did you have a problem with it? Like, why don't you drink? Oh, like you're just this weird Christian. And so I think the delivery of how you say it is very helpful. And usually when I go out, somebody offers me something and I'm like, no, I'm good. I don't need a drink. Like, I usually can just leave it at that. If they ask questions, I'll usually just say like, oh, like I just don't want to. I want water instead. Or I'll say like, I like being sober and I don't need to be drunk to have fun. Like something lighthearted. I think when you make it a big deal, it becomes a big deal that you're not. And I think it's a lot easier than you may think when you just go into those environments or when you're asked those questions, when you answer with just like confidence and a carefree posture. Most people don't pry, and if they do, I think it opens a really cool opportunity to speak into why you don't drink or why you don't do drugs. And most time I've never done a drug in my entire life. And the only people that know that are the people that have asked. I don't like go around to these environments like, I've never done that. I've never done that. I would never do such a thing. Like, that's not me at all. I think the only people that know are the people that are like, oh, why not? And then if I'm like, oh, I've just never really done it. And they're like, then they ask more questions. Well, why not? Well, this, that. And then it actually opens up a really cool conversation that I can have because I already knew where I stood with it. And I have my reasons and I have my convictions and I have my theology behind it. I think that's a big thing too with how to say no is I would understand why you're saying no. If you don't know why you're saying no, besides I feel guilty or I feel like it's a sin, then I think that reasoning can only get you so far. So I would encourage you to just really think on, why am I saying no to this? And just a few examples for me when it comes to alcohol, I say no for health reasons. I'm very careful about what I put in my body. I say no because I like being in control. I say no because I have so much fun without it. I say no because I don't want to be bloated. I don't want to go to the bathroom and look like I gained 5 pounds because I had alcohol in me. I say no because it makes my face really red, and I usually don't like that. So I have like an endless list of reasons of like, no, I don't say no because of personal convictions, because of what the Bible says, because we're called to stay sober minded. But I also say no because of a million other things that I prefer to enjoy life in without having to experience those symptoms or those side effects of it. The second question is how to deal with embarrassment if you don't want to drink at a party. I kind of touched on this earlier, but I think it's so normal to feel embarrassed, and it can feel like you're such an outcast by not. And I want to bring clarity into that and truth and say, like, you are not an outcast whatsoever. There's probably a bunch of people there that are not drinking, or if they are, they don't necessarily want to be drinking. They are probably just doing it because of whatever. They want to feel socially comfortable. They want to feel just a little bit more loose in the environment. They maybe want to kind of forget about things and have a good time. I think it's normal to feel like, ooh, I'm awkward. This is awkward. I feel like I don't belong here. In that, I would say how to deal with that feeling is just, I think, start listening to other people and cultivating friend groups and friendships that also feel those same ways. I think that gives you a lot of strength. I was really blessed. I had parents that didn't drink. They weren't big drinkers. They don't do any drugs, anything like that. And it was easier for me because my home environment was a place where that wasn't the norm. And so if alcohol was in the house, that wasn't normal. So for me, my normal was not doing those things. So it didn't feel awkward or uncomfortable. And then like now as an adult, same thing. I think in my core circle, a lot of us have very similar thoughts as I do when it comes to substances and the amount we consume, what that's going to look like, and the reasonings we're doing it. And so it feels like I have such a community that when I do step into places without them, I don't feel awkward because I know that there's already so many people similar to me that feel that way. And it's almost empowering, I think. And with that as well, I actually listened to, as I was preparing for this podcast, I was listening to other podcasts, and I found it so encouraging. And so I would say if you are kind of struggling with, I feel really alone in this, I feel really awkward in this, I would encourage you, like, before you go to that party, before you enter that environment where there is going to be substances that you might want to do, but you know you shouldn't, or that you don't want to do, but you feel like you're going to be pressured, and anything that doesn't feel natural, I would just encourage you beforehand, listen to a podcast on it, call a friend, fill your ears with people that are so encouraging and empowering about their no in that specific scenario. And you'd be fascinated. Like when I was listening to podcasts preparing for this, I was fired up. I was like, wow, like I feel so like awesome. I feel so great knowing there's thousands of people that are doing this, that are living in sobriety, that are, maybe taking it a step further than I am, that are overcoming these things. Like it just gave me so much encouragement. So I would suggest really filling your ears and your circles with people that are going to make you feel like you're not alone. The last question is how to stand firm in your morals, even around others who try to get you to do bad things. I think standing firm in your morals kind of goes along with what I've been saying throughout this podcast, but when you understand your why behind it, and when you are very confident in the choices you make every day, and you also understand no one should ever have a say of what you put inside of your body, and in other areas of life that seems normal, and it's like, okay, yeah, of course, I would never tell you to eat that if I know you're allergic to it. I would never tell you to take that if I know it makes your stomach hurt. And so when it comes to substances, the same thing applies. Of just understand that no one should have that say over what you should put in your body. And understanding why you don't put certain things in your body for yourself, I think, is just so helpful when it comes to being around people that are doing those things. Being able to have a good time and not make the environment feel awkward because you're not partaking. And easier said than done for sure. But kind of like I said, just deciding beforehand if you're going to have fun or not. If you're going to these things because you're pressured into going and you show up really awkward and uncomfortable and it's not fun to be there, like, I would just say leave. That's been me. I've done that. I've been pressured into going somewhere. I don't want to go there. I feel uncomfortable in those environments. I don't feel safe in those environments. And I'm like, you know what? It's not worth it. I'm just going to go. I'm not going to have a good time. I know I don't want to do these things. I don't want to partake. And even if I did, it wouldn't really change the way I feel right now. And so I'd rather just leave. And it's not that big of a deal. Like, I don't need to make it a big deal. It's okay. And so I'd say just kind of trust your intuition in those things. And also, I do really want to stress that if you are going to consume anything, be so safe about where you're doing it. And I know so many people that have had horrible experiences because they've been drugged or something's happened or they've had too much. And I cannot stress enough just how cautious you have to be. And I think it's so important to always have your safety first in mind. Like, I love going out. I love having a great time, but my safety is always my number one priority. And even if that's water that I'm drinking, I'm so beyond cautious of my environments. And so that's a big reason too why I don't want to be out of control, is because of the environments I'm in. And even if you feel like you're so safe in the environment you might be in, even if the people around you seem so trustworthy, I just still want to encourage you that always be aware. Be aware. I want to encourage you to be aware of the people around you, because not everyone might have that mindset. And there's been a lot of times where it's been helpful that I've been able to notice other girls that might need some help, or I've seen things I'm like, ooh, we're like, no, we're going to throw that out. I don't know where that's been. I don't know who could have touched that. You might not be thinking that way because you might be like having your fun, but like, I'm going to take care of that for you. And like, I'm going to make sure you don't consume whatever that is. And so I just want to say, like, if you do consume things, no matter what it is, it could have substance or not. I think in environments where substances are being used, it is just so important to have your safety and everyone else's safety in mind, and have that be the forefront of kind of what guides those decisions. And when I've made those decisions, like, oh, I've pre-decided I'm going to have a wine night. I've pre-decided I'm going to have a drink at this place. My safety is still always my first priority. So if I get there and I'm like, maybe not, or if I get there and things are already opened, I'm like, you know what? Not worth the risk. And I don't want you to live in fear, but live just being aware. In Romans 12, verse 2, it says, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will." I think that goes along with all of the questions, just right there. Like, we're called not to conform. Don't conform. Let your mind be renewed and transformed. And renewing and transforming of your mind doesn't really take place when you have things that are altering the state of it. I think when it comes to the friends that we kind of talked about as well, Proverbs 13:20 just says it so beautifully. It says, "Walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm." I'm very cautious of who I let into my life and who I will pour into and let pour into me. And I think I've learned I'd much rather have friends that are so fulfilling and I can have fun with and I can grow with, I'm called higher with, and there's so much wisdom in them over fun friends. And I've always been the person that I'd rather have no company than bad company. And sometimes it's left me really, really lonely at stages in my life for long periods of time. But I think when you do have wise counsel around you, it's so much easier and so much more enjoyable to walk out life in such a lighter way versus when you have people doing things that you don't agree with and you know why you don't agree with them and you know that they're wrong and you continuously give your time and energy to those friendships, to those friend groups, to those environments. I think it's easy to become like them. And there was even a time I was living in a content house and none of my morals had changed. It was still the exact same for me. But because my environment was so heavy in substance, was so heavy in darkness and just heavy in drama and all of these things, it took the biggest toll on me. And I compromised not in ways that I was mad at myself for, but I didn't hold myself to the standard I knew I should. And I wasn't able to live each day feeling at peace, feeling light. I felt like there was always a massive weight on me just from being in those environments every day and being in those crowds every day. And my normal got warped. And it took such a toll on me that I didn't ever see coming. And even though I held true to myself, it wasn't in a way where it was fun. It was in a way where I was doing the most to stay true to who I was. And it was exhausting. And so when you're around people that encourage you in the choices you're making in the areas that you're trying to walk higher in, then it's so much easier. It's so much better. And it's so much more fun. So I hope this episode just provided some clarity for you guys and gave you some helpful tips and tools into how to navigate these environments, how to just feel better, how to have a different approach to them, how to feel like, hey, it's actually totally okay and it's totally normal not to partake, and it doesn't have to be a big deal if you don't make it a big deal. And I want to encourage you to, even if you think you know your reasons why you don't, to make a list. Have a list on your phone. Create a list in your notes app of, this is why I'm making the choice I'm going to make. This is why I'm going to live out my life in this way, and have that reminder for yourself. I love you guys so much. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye.